Hello and welcome to another Star Wars The Old Republic video on my channel. Today I'm going to be making a video that's more catered towards the people who aren't already playing the game. And I'm going to be looking at convincing you or telling you what makes playing Star Wars a great experience, some of the big highlights about it, some of the reasons why you might want to think about playing it. And specifically, we're going to be looking at how this game really doesn't need to be played as an MMO. And I'm going to be working on telling you exactly why this is a great game to get into as a player who wants to play by themselves as a solo player game. So without further ado, we're going to walk you through why this really doesn't have to be an MMO and why this game caters so strongly as a single player game to players. So let's start off by talking about the different group content. I know it seems a little bit weird, but I really want to exemplify first why the group content in this game is something that you don't really have to participate in and you can still really enjoy the game, and then we'll get into those great reasons about the pluses of this game, what it has to offer to the single player, the different things that are good. Operations are not part of the key story. There's no requirements to play them. There's no point at all that you're required to say join a group, do something that's group content to progress the story. There are pieces of story attached to the operations that you can get through. There's a few exclusive high-end endgame sets that are included in operations, as well as if you go into the hardest difficulty, they've got a rare crafting material. But none of these are required to actually play the game at a high level and to actually enjoy playing the game. So operations are completely optional content. They're there if you want to play them. But unlike some other MMOs, there is no core aspect designed around saying you need to do these operations. The next main source of group content, probably the most common group content, is flashpoints. So flashpoints are like an operation. They're just smaller. You only get 4 people. They're designed to be easier, shorter. Some of these do have stories attached to them, and some of the stories line up very well with the actual main story of the game. But it's not required again. So these are similar to operations. The story is absolutely not mandatory to progress through and to know what's happening in the story. They're complementary. They're things that you can choose to do. They are a great way to get gear. They're a great way to level up, so on. And the interesting thing about flashpoints is once you get to a high level and you get fairly skilled, you can solo the majority of flashpoints on almost every difficulty. You can definitely solo all of them that have a story mode available. So they've created about half the flashpoints have a story mode. They're designed to play by yourself or solo mode. Very easy to play. You don't have to be high level or very skilled to be able to get through them, just so you can enjoy that story aspect. And then the intermediate difficulty veteran mode, as you get more experience at the game, you can solo all of them on veteran mode as far as I know. So again, this is kind of a big part of the group content in this game that you don't have to do, but on top of that, most of it you can do solo, unlike operations which do require group. A side note to this, there's also a feature called Uprisings. Uprisings are kind of like faster, more action-paced flashpoints. Those are subscriber content. You don't really have to do them. They don't have any significant story. They just kind of flesh out these little tiny side quests as you get further in the expansion. They tell you a few extra like, oh, look at this enemy, look at that enemy. Sadly, you can't really solo those as much as you used to be able to. It used to be much easier to. They've increased difficulty. But again, you don't have to do those ones. So the game also offers PvP modes as well. This is a recording I made earlier of myself in a PvP match that's 8v8. The thing about PvP is they've got 2 versions. They've got where you're playing your character and another one where you're flying a starship. Both of these are not required at all to play the game. So the PvP is just kind of there as an extra like, hey, if you like this content, here it is, you can do it. So aside from a few specialty items that the vendors give you from ranking up in PvP, you're not required to do PvP. So once again, we've gone through pretty much all of the group content that the game has catered towards you. Operations, uprisings, flashpoints, PvP. This is all kind of what's designed to be the group content. And none of it is actually required to progress the main story. None of it's required to get up to end game gearing, to make money, to farm the gear you need. All of these options do allow you to do that, but you can also do it all solo without being part of a group. Alright, so now we're getting into the really good stuff about why it's such a great game to play solo. It's a lot like a role-playing game, an RPG game. There's so much story, there's so many different options you can get. So right off the bat, when you go to make a new character, you get to choose between whether you want to be on the Republic side or the Sith Empire side. Both of these contain their own unique stories, their own unique environment, being part of the Sith Empire or being part of the Galactic Republic. And once you get within that, you also have 4 stories that you can play through. Each of these 4 stories are unique and distinct, and there's going to be 4 more when you go and choose a character on the Republic side. So speaking of the story, one of the things that a lot of players find great about Star Wars is the ability to pick your options throughout the story, and it changes how the conversation dialogue goes. Now, it actually goes a little bit further than that. For a game that does have this linear story progression where you have to kind of go from A to B, it's surprising how many choices they've baked into the game to change your options as you play. So a lot of these options do actually have lasting effects on the gameplay at certain key moments in the story as you're choosing through. So not everything is going to change your story as you choose the options. They might just change that individual cutscene, but there actually are quite a few different story cutscenes, a few different options that are really dependent on the choice you've made throughout, and there's references different characters and NPCs make throughout the game depending on the choices you've made. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of freedom to kind of create your own adventure and see those changes in real time. So once you've gone through all of the expansion story, there's actually quite a bit of stuff that's replayable. You can also do it on harder difficulties. And one of the main areas that they offer you a lot of replayability is chapters. So Knights of the Fallen Empire and Knights of the Eternal Throne, they really started to kind of get into the story-driven narrative with high-quality cutscenes at an even better level than they had previously done in the game. And all of these, they give you the option to redo them and change your difficulty, which is pretty cool that you can go back without creating a new character to re-enjoy all these parts of stories. So as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the group content, there is nothing that's going to restrict you from progressing through all of the story if you want to play as a solo player. So all the story you can get through solo. You don't have to do any group content or group up with people to be able to reach and play all of the intended main story, go through all the quests and all the stuff I was just talking about. Alright, so let's talk about some other content you can do outside of doing the main story and all the story-driven content in the game. One of the real common things that players will do a lot is daily heroic missions. So these are considered 2+, which means that they suggest you have 2 players to beat it. The nice thing though is the game does give you an NPC companion. You can set them to any of the 3 roles available: heal, tank, or damage, depending on what best suits your need to help get through some content. And heroic missions are spread out across a bunch of different planets, and they're a great way to just fill in time grinding, getting whether that be conquest, gear, credits. Also, there are a few special places in the game where you will find Heroic 4 missions. So Heroic 4 missions generally just exclusive to a couple of events and a couple of the daily areas. These ones are very hard to solo. I actually haven't tried to go back and solo them now that I'm in endgame gear. So I'm going to hop in that and we'll show you our results. And this Heroic 4, it's been pretty good for me so far. I've been utilizing my full toolkit though. It definitely hasn't been something that's extremely easy content that you can just walk into. Quite a few different things that the game has given me that allow me to be able to be a lot stronger when I'm doing solo content with companions. So they give you this ability called Heroic Moment. I get these special attacks depending on how upgraded my legacy is. It heals me a little bit over time. And I've also got this other ability called Unity, which when you have a companion out, it's 50% damage reduction for you and your companion for 15 seconds. One of the things that's great too is if you're playing on a class who has stealth, you can just put yourself in stealth mode and you can walk through a large portion of the enemies, and you can see I'm heading towards the main objective down here. So we've made it to the final boss room, and there's a very simple cheese. You don't even need to be in a group. All you have to do is run around and actually do the objective while skipping the boss. But that isn't very fun, so I'm going to take on the boss, and we'll be right back after we see how I do against him. Holy crikey, was he hard to solo. So he gave me quite a challenge. I had a self-heal that kept healing him back up. Holy frick, yeah. That was fun. There we go. Just soloed Heroic 4. There is the option, if you're not 100% dead set on playing solo, where if you're in an area and you see other players with you, you can just click them, invite to group, and sometimes people just join you and be like, yeah, we're both in the same area, we're both doing this, we might as well group up together. So yeah, as I was saying, Heroic 4 sometimes only in daily areas. This is a daily area, so again, daily areas are a lot like doing heroics, but they just give you a kind of a fixed area to do missions in, fixed set of missions, whereas heroics kind of travel you all over the place. So that is some solo content that you can do to grind up, get reputation with different factions, so on. As I mentioned earlier, flashpoints have a solo mode. This is where you find them. Not all of them will say solo specifically on them. but this allows you to do them without having to have high level gear, without having to be really experienced at your class. All right, so I think this is take number 8, trying to condense this all down. A lot of these other solo activities that are kind of the main things I want to suggest to you on top of doing your daily areas and your heroics. So, geez, where do I even start, So there's the achievement system. The game has tons and tons of achievements, so there's definitely people who play this game just to be achievement hunters. Sadly, you're not going to get 100% achievements without doing a few things as group content, but damn, there are a lot of achievements you can go for without ever grouping up with players. Also, crafting and gathering. The game has a crafting and gathering system. I don't think it's a really complex one. It's not super fleshed out. Most of the time you can do all the crafting and gathering just on one character with a few crew skills. But there are a few things in the game where you are required to set up 3 or 4 different characters with different crafting skills, different gathering skills, and put that all together before you're actually able to make something yourself. Alright, so let's talk about guilds quickly as well. Doesn't seem like it's going to be a solo activity, but actually you can do a lot of stuff solo in guilds. This is a guild that I've actually set up where myself and one other person were the only people in this guild who actively play. If we look at last played, you can see pretty much nobody's been logging in. 2 people have been logging into the guild in the last year. That's the way we set it up. Play by ourselves. It allows us to manipulate the guild flagship. We can farm the resources to try and unlock the additional rooms. We can try and level it up, set all the perks that we want to put in there. And most importantly, being part of a guild gives you access to a bunch of different things. So it gives you access to a bunch of different bonuses that help you level up, gain experience faster, so on. You get to set invasion targets relating to conquest to push yourself and get more rewards for meeting your guild's conquest target. And yeah, speaking of conquest is the thing that a lot of people love to grind out. There's a lot of different missions that it gives you that are varying different points, and people quite often say how big of a number I can get. And other players just stick with getting their 50,000 conquests required to get the bonuses, which give you a lot of resources that can be sold to get a lot of endgame stuff, a lot of credits. And then also the guild invasion, when that's met and your personal conquest is met, you get a whole bunch of additional bonuses, which again are great for you. So I highly suggest making sure you're part of a guild, even though you don't have to do anything group with them. You can, but you get the benefits whether you play by yourself or group up with people. What about the loot grinding in this game? Grinding is something that a lot of people do enjoy, and I feel like there's certain aspects of this game where they've done a really, really good job at the grinding. So loot grinding, I feel, has been streamlined. It's been made very well. So you don't actually have to do specific content to get the gear. So what's going to happen is gear is based on item rating as to whether it's better or not. So you're going to get different quality tiers. You're going to get your blues, your greens, your purples, your golds. But really what matters is the highest item rating is the best, and then there's going to be specialty sets. None of this stuff requires you to play specifically one type of content, the best map to farm it. There's a ton of different places you can farm it. As long as you're not doing certain content that's catered to really low level, then all of the gear that's going to drop for you is going to be based around your current item rating, and you're going to be able to play pretty much anything you want to continue progressing through the grind for the gear. So another big aspect of grinding in this game is player created strongholds. So the stronghold itself, all the buildings and everything, they've created the general idea, but you get to farm all the decorations, you get to decorate it, you get to put all the stuff down. So all these things that we're seeing that make it come alive and make it seem full and interesting, these are things that have been grinded by a player. So some of these items could be cash store items. You can get them off the Galactic Trade Network if you want to grind out credits instead of paying actual money or trade with other players. And then a lot of these can also be farmed and collected by going to certain maps, certain missions. So there's a huge amount of grinding that can be done, decorating strongholds, decking them out, making them look exactly like you want. And that can be a very satisfying aspect for some players. Another piece of content that I think a lot of players seem to gravitate towards too is doing the Galactic Trade Network. So there's a lot of things about the Galactic Trade Network that allow you to play the game. So right away I searched for Augment 74, and if you look right here, look at how everything's sorted. Now I'm going to sort by unit price. You'll notice that it suddenly shifted. By default, the game has a weird nonsensical sorting system when you search for an item, so there's already a market inefficiency right there. And then the other thing is there's no market history, no market data, and if you look at the amount of time, 3 days is the max amount of time someone can list something, so there's always a lot of inefficiencies for players who want to spend the time learning what prices of items are worth, buying, selling, supply, demand, all that kind of stuff, and you can make tons and tons of money as a subscriber playing the GTN. Whew. We almost got through all this content so far. There's a few other things that I want to point out because these are things that a lot of players really also like about the game. These are 2 things that I think have been suggested time and time and time again as people's favorite aspect of the game, in addition to some of the stuff I've already talked about. Big component why a lot of people like playing the game, especially solo, is alts. Feeding your alt addiction. Alts, alts, and alts. You can create so many characters. As you can see here, I've got a whole bunch of different characters that are available to me. I've only created 12 myself, but you can even do this on other servers. You can see that I already have one character started on the Starforge server. You can have so many different characters. You can choose how to play them differently. You can choose different outfits. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that you can do with having alts, and even more alts. And now let's talk about another aspect of the game that so many players absolutely love about this game, Space Barbie. So you can see as I wander around Fleet here and I look at some of the different people and their companions, you can see the wide variety of armors and colors and different ways to customize how you look and get that look that's, really what you want to have for your character. They have a lot higher level of detail in a lot of the outfits and costumes, a lot more customization than I've seen in a lot of other MMOs. So it's not the best that I've seen in any game, but a lot of players really do like it and they find that there's quite a good amount of stuff. So although there is a lot of group content and a lot of MMO aspect of Star Wars The Old Republic, there is an almost endless amount of content you can play without ever actually talking to another player. This game definitely you can choose if you want to play it solo, if you want to do group content. There's nothing that pigeonholes you in and says, hey, you have to do this group content. I know in Final Fantasy, for example, there's a few times where they say, guess what? You're doing this big raid. If you want to get any further in your progress, you got to join other players. Which isn't always a bad thing, but if you're a player who's looking to play something solo, this game really offers you that opportunity to say, we're not going to really cut you out on much if you choose to never play with other players. Now, if you're intimidated by the massive amount of abilities, items, and so on, with being an MMO and looking so complex, you really don't have to worry about that. They've designed a huge amount of the game to be very simple, very forgiving for players who don't want to learn all that stuff. So you don't have to have all your abilities, you don't have to have all your buttons out, you don't have to know how to play everything optimally to get through all the content. But as you decide that you want to level up that difficulty level and you want to ramp it up, you really do need to learn that. You really need to get that end game gear, learn how to play your character well. And they offer you a lot of challenge that if you don't take the time to learn all those intricacies, you are not going to do well at the high difficulties of this game. So you've got a lot of different options there in terms of you can pick characters that play really easy versus characters that are a lot more complex and harder to learn. So they give you a bit of variation there in deciding, what playstyle do I want, how difficult do I want it to be, and so on. And then the next thing I really want to point out is the method of playing this game, because this game is free to play. They have 3 different tiers that you can go with, and I think it's a really great system that they've designed overall. You've got, at the very bottom end, you've got your free-to-play model, which is you don't want to give them a single penny, ever give them any money. You can play a ton of the game for free. You can get, hundreds, if not over 1,000 hours of not running out of things to do as a free-to-play player, and you can do a whole ton of story as well as other different things grinding. But as you start going further in the story, the level cap, the experience slowdown, the gear caps, the credit caps, there's a lot of things that you really want to upgrade. And they offer you this awesome thing called preferred status. And it gives you higher level caps, less restrictions, and there's a bunch of good things about preferred. Preferred overall is a really great place to sit if you're not interested in paying the monthly subscription fee. The thing that makes preferred status through a subscription really great is it unlocks all the current expansions. So as a free-to-play player, you only get a couple expansions unlocked with the base game, and then if you subscribe for just 1 month, you get all the content they've created for the game is now unlocked to you, and you have all those expansions available. They offer you a ton of content that you get, and you get to keep that preferred status indefinitely, and you always get the perks of being preferred over free-to-play. And then there's subscriber. So for some people, you're going to find that it's still worth paying that subscription every month to play solo. There's a lot of nice perks that you might really want. Even as a solo player, some of the perks you're going to find are definitely worth it, but that's your choice to make. So that's the Star Wars universe. This is Star Wars The Old Republic. It's a great game to play whether you want to play solo or play it with other people in terms of exploring the Star Wars lore, Star Wars universe.
This is the best job in the galaxy.
Ooh, I like you. You're even crazier than the rest of these hunters.
The game has a lot to offer you no matter how you want to choose to play the game, whether that being solo or playing with other players. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful as to reasons why you might want to trial out Star Wars The Old Republic. So as always, see you guys in the next video, and I hope you have a great day today.